Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's edition of Roundabout Sports presented by Interstate 70 Sports Media, where our passion is our profession. It is a beautiful Wednesday evening, June 7th, 2023. I am the maestro Jeremy Karp alongside Babs this evening. Babs, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So once again, we're going to do a special tribute episode this week. It comes just a couple weeks after the passing of superstar Billy Graham, but reports came out this morning that Hussein Caruso Ali Vaziri, who is known all over the world as WWE Hall of Famer, the Iron Sheik, and former WWF champion, passed away at the age of 81. And yeah, then Nick chiming in on his thoughts. Be sure to share some of your favorite memories, folks. With the passing of both superstar Billy Graham and the Iron Sheik, there are only two former WWF champions prior to 1990 who are still alive, that being Hulk Hogan and Bob Backlund, which I'll be honest, Babs, it's just a crazy stat to think about because 1990 was not really that long ago.
No, it was not. And actually, that's really hitting my childhood in the heart when you say that, because that means that there's not a lot of true legends around anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the Iron Sheik definitely was interesting. I mean, he became WWF champion the day after Christmas in 1983 when he defeated Bob Backlund, who had a 5-year title reign heading into that evening in Madison Square Garden. And it was controversial at the time because Backlund refused to submit to the camel clutch, but Backlund's manager Arnold Skolland threw in the towel for him. And meanwhile, Iron Sheik held on to the title for nearly a year until, of course, he lost it to Hulk Hogan in 1984.
Yep.
It was known as Towgate. And, of course, 1984
Yeah.
launched the birth of Hulkamania. So this is what was interesting. This also began his heated rivalry with Sergeant Slaughter. And they had,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
once again, Madison Square Garden cites some of the most notable moments in wrestling history. Well, it became home of their famous boot camp match. And eventually he became a anti-American. I mean, he's always the anti-American, but he became a big-time anti-American tag team alongside Nikolai Volkov, who passed away a few years ago at the age of 70. And they went on to win the WWF World Tag Team Championship in 1985 at the very first WrestleMania. And Nick saying that he feels that he is the biggest heel of all time. You could definitely make that argument, especially in the era where kayfabe was larger than life.
Yes.
People legitimately hated him. Like, this was not just your simple, oh, we're just going to boo him. No, this was a straight up, we cannot stand you. Get the hell out of our arena, out of our lives. Go back to where you came from. I mean, he was the first Iranian WWF champion, the first true Iranian star in professional wrestling. People tried to stab him and shoot him. And Jared brings up a great point here, Babs, that his rivalry with Sergeant Slaughter doesn't get as much attention as it probably should.
I agree with that because everybody, I think, associates him with Hulk Hogan just because of his epic Twitter rivalry with Hulk Hogan. And I'm sure we'll touch on that later on in the show, too.
Well, yeah, we're definitely going to be touching on the rivalry that he had with Hulk Hogan. It's interesting because He made a lot of appearances on the Howard Stern show, on the Eric
Oh,
Andre
yes.
show, um, and what's
I
interesting is
will say this.
go ahead.
I'll say this, that this kind of probably kind of goes in the hand in hand, but I think that he opened the door. Now you're talking biggest heels of all time. Now that kind of opens the door for the argument of Muhammad Hussein. Do you remember him? He
Yes, I
was
remember Muhammad
the
Hassan.
yes, yeah, so he was kind of like the modern era Iron Sheik. I will say that with the bottom of my heart that he is the modern era Iron Sheik. And I'm pretty
Well,
sure that he probably inspired him in some way.
yeah, it's interesting that I think the difference, though, you look at Muhammad Hassan. First off, he was of Italian descent, born in Syracuse, New York, whereas the Iron Sheik was actually born in Iran. He
Right.
was in the Semnan province of Iran, born in 1942. Um, and it's interesting because, and we'll delve into more of this later on in the show, but you had mentioned about the things he said with Hulk Hogan on his shoot interviews, his um his vulgar language and his dislike of a lot of wrestlers. The thing of it is, it was always a huge subject of debate if he really meant what he said.
Oh yeah, and see, and I wonder how much of that was actually like real and how much of that was trying just to get the Twitter going, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was that perfect social media presence. He literally was like a cult phenomenon.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so folks, like I
Like
said,
I actually believe that there's a Facebook group called Things Iron Sheik Says, and it's got over 200,000 people in it.
I could totally believe it. And one of my favorite stories, and they had said, I think it was Bruce Pritchard who had said this. So his last in-ring appearance was at WrestleMania X7, and it was in a gimmick battle royal that only lasted a few minutes, but he eliminated, Hillbilly Jim and Sergeant Slaughter to win the match. Well, the reason he was booked to win the match was because he was physically unable to be thrown over the top rope. Like he was, I guess, I don't know if I'd say fragile, but it was just he could not take the bump of getting thrown over the top rope. Um and yeah, Jared is always tuning in. I love what he says here. Um no matter what Iron said, it always sparked controversy in a good way. It got people questioning his statement. Well, absolutely. And yeah, Nick, I don't know if you knew this. There was the gimmick battle royal WrestleMania X7. You had the Iron Sheik, you had Hillbilly Jim, Kamala. You even had Jim Cornette and Brother Love. You had Michael Hayes, Repo Man, the Goon. On commentary, you had Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gene Okerlund. So I mean, it was just a wild. And like I said, the match was only a few minutes, but nevertheless, um, and Jared says he should have been in the gimmick battle royal. Jared's got a match against Shaft in January to prepare for, so I know that's the top thing on. I believe in January, but I know that's the top thing that's on his mind right now. So no, I definitely just take a look at why the Iron Sheik was such um, a legend among legends, because he got such a huge response when he was there in Houston at the Astrodome. And even as a heel, he was still getting cheered because he became a cultural phenomenon.
Oh, for sure. Did they do one of those A&E specials on him or not yet?
I do not believe so. But I
Because
know
he would be
that
perfect for it.
actually, you know
Or
what? I
maybe,
do. No, I take that back. They did. I think I'm pretty
did
sure they
they?
did do a WWE Legends. Yeah, I just realized it was a few months ago. They did. I
Oh,
believe in
okay.
April they did a WWE Legends thing on A&E of the Iron Sheik.
Okay.
So yeah, most definitely. So and then let's see. I know there's so much about the Iron Sheik. I know that he oops, give me 1 second. There were so many legendary battles he had with some of the biggest names in pro wrestling. Um, I know that the Twitter statement by the family released after his death said, with his larger than life persona, incredible charisma, and unparalleled in ring skills, he captivated audience. The He was a trailblazer, breaking barriers and paving the way for a diverse range of wrestlers who followed in his. And let's be real here. The camel clutch is arguably one of the most famous and infamous um, finishers, let alone
I was going to say finishing
finishers,
moves.
finishing moves, submissions, whatever you want to call it, moves in wrestling history. Everybody knew about, uh, Iron Sheik always going around saying that he put Bob Backlund in the camel clutch and made him, winning the
He humbled
title.
him.
He humbled him. He was a
He
jabroni.
humbled
He
him.
humbled
Yes.
number one. Um,
Yes.
and the thing of it is, what a lot of people don't realize. I mentioned earlier about the whole thing with kayfabe. Well, in the late '80s, there was a time that Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Iron Sheik were caught in the car together with a bunch of cocaine. And for two reasons, there's a lot of things wrong about that. Number one, the fact that he had a shit ton of cocaine in the car. Number two,
Right.
it was the fact that Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik were bitter enemies, but yet they were in the same car together, and everybody was like, "What?" I know our favorite heel referee Christopher Miles was saying how they weren't necessarily the best of friends, but still, just having them two together in an era where they did everything they could to keep people apart. You know,
Right. Right.
and Babs,
And
I want you to take this
I
one. I
just
want
checked
you.
on I just checked on Twitter, and because of Iron Sheik, they don't really do like one trend worldwide anymore, but Hulk Hogan is actually the number one trend for the US right now because of Iron Sheik. So if that tells you anything about the magnitude of their feud together,
Well, exactly.
it's incredible because it says there's over 1.2 million tweets about it.
Everybody. So I want to say this. Jared puts on here. Imagine if Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund had a standoff in the current day and age. I
Oh yeah.
mean, crowd would eat it up.
Oh, for sure.
They eat that
Definitely have
nostalgia up.
USA chance going for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, now I take a look at no, excuse me. I look at the thing with Hogan. See, you mentioned how Hulk Hogan is the number one trend in the US. So the reason for that, every good guy, if you will, needs to have that bad guy. John
Yep.
Cena needed Edge. He needed JBL. He needed Umaga. He needed Randy Orton, CM Punk. Hulk Hogan had the Iron Sheik to kick it off. Of course, he had Andre the Giant. He had the Ultimate Warrior. He had Macho Man. But all of it started with the Iron Sheik. What made him the American hero was when he defeated the Iranian badass at the world's most famous arena. And that's where it all started. That's what launched the WWF into the big time phenomenon. It spearheaded what would eventually be WrestleMania. Like, I just take a look at all the accomplishments that the Iron Sheik had in WWE, even if it wasn't solely based on title reigns. I mean, but we can go through that. Here's something. So he was a one-time tag team champion and a one-time WWF champion. But he was also voted the most underrated wrestler in 1980 by the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And yeah, Nick even made it clear. This was back during the WWF days too. Which you brought up at the beginning of the show, Babs, is a bygone era.
Pretty much all the eras, even the Attitude Era, which is the most common, or not common, but the most current era besides the PG era. I mean, it's all gone. And so were all of our heroes along with it. And it's really sad.
Yeah, it really is. I want you to take a look at what Jared said. Jared says, I think one of the biggest missed opportunities is the Ultimate Warrior versus the Iron Sheik. What's your thoughts on that?
Now, okay, so I put Ultimate Warrior up on Hulk Hogan levels because everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew kind of, if they heard the dun, 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 whenever he came out, you knew that the energy was about to raise in the building. And imagine the Ultimate Warrior back in his prime and Iron Sheik in his prime. Another USA versus, overseas. And it would have been amazing. And I could have only imagined the promos that would have came from it. Because if you remember any of the promos that Hulk or Warrior had with Hulk Hogan talking about going in the spaceship and stuff. And I'm just like, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I could just imagine the promos alone from that could be phenomenal.
Oh, absolutely. Another moment I remember from the Iron Sheik was when he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 2005. It was just the second year in since they restarted the WWE Hall of Fame. And I remember, just the big reaction he got from the crowd. Because it meant a lot to him. It meant so much to be a part of this elite group. And it's funny because for as much as obviously he's that anti-American guy, people in America in his later years just ate up everything he would say.
And still did, even to this day.
Yeah. I look at some of the funny here. These are just some quotes that the Iron Sheik said. We'll say some more later on, but here's just some of the famous quotes the Iron Sheik has said. Quote, never give up or you are big time jabroni. So it's every 100 year, mother make baby like Iron Sheik, Michael Jordan, and the Jesus. Only one chance to prove you are the real in the lifetime.
I remember that one, actually.
I personally like this one. If I see the Hulk Hogan or the Donald Trump, I break their back and make them humble.
Yep.
Let's see. I like this. Every day I live above the ground, I happy. And that's what makes a lot of this great, too. Because it's not that, because, I mean, it's shitty spelling and broken English, which is what makes it all the more better, especially when it's on Twitter.
Right.
Like, I like this. Here we go. I do the Howard Stern make me happy. Also, I sold out the Comedy Store in the Los Angeles for my roast. This way everybody know I make the people laugh and happy. I love it. And see, some of them are very humble and sweet. And then you got ones like this where he says Katy Perry looked like Kermit the Frog.
I'm sorry. Oh, wow.
And then he always would call Mean Gene Okerlund Gene Mean. So he said, Gene Mean, he come to my wedding. He always make the Sheiky baby look #1 in the promo. He know the camera zoom. It makes the legend the real forever. Like, and you can go on all day.
Of Mean Gene Okerlund. Now, I believe that if he wasn't around, a lot of things would have been different because he was a master of his craft. He could do no wrong, really.
I mean, you hit the nail right on the head on that one.
Because imagine, well, I mean, I could imagine if, Gorilla Monsoon, if he wasn't even a thing, I am so grateful that I was able to see wrestling at its glory days. Now, I'm not saying that wrestling isn't at its peak right now, but I'm talking about when everyone, and I mean everyone, used to watch. You could go to the supermarket and people would see your wrestling shirt and be like, oh, are you NWO black or white or red or black or blah, blah, blah. And it was just a huge thing. And I'm very grateful that I got to see a lot of these guys before they went on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I like what Jared said here. Just like Rusev, people hated him, and I put his rivalry with Cena at the level with Hogan and the Sheik. People hated Rusev, but you must respect how they ran with the character. And that's the big thing. Foreign heat is the easiest heat any wrestler could ever get. You just have to say something bad about America or be from another country, and you're automatically basically the bad guy in the eyes of the American audience. But it worked to perfection with guys like Rusev and the Iron Sheik because they're from Bulgaria and Iran. And the tensions that they have with America. Obviously you've had your Heart Foundations. You've had, like the Mexicools. You've had the Full-Blooded Italians. You had a lot of these other groups and stables that were depicted from other countries. But it was different when it came down to this. So
let's not forget that even though he's not from overseas, he was the greatest WWE champion of all time, and his name is Jinder Mahal. I loved it. It was something different. It was something different.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Good. It was something different. It wasn't. No, it wasn't.
Yes.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
I didn't like it. Thank you, Jared. Jared said Jinder sucked. I am so glad he agrees with me on that one. That was
my bestie turned on me, and that's terrible. That breaks my heart.
Your bestie has good insight. It was
very. Oh, now he's your friend.
Yeah. Okay. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. No. I look at Jinder Mahal's time. See, and this is another thing. Jinder Mahal, terrible title reign. Rusev never got that title reign. Iron Sheik had a good title reign. But it was only meant to be there. Because, look, there was no way you were going to have Bob Backlund in 1983 or 84 lose the title to Hulk Hogan. It wasn't going to happen. You had, back then, keep in mind, promoters and promotions need to realize that now that it's not about always a good guy and a bad guy. But back then, that was the norm. That's the thing. Back then, you had to have the good guy and the bad guy, the face versus the heel. You couldn't have two baby faces going out for the title. So that's just how I look at it.
And I totally agree. Because now, if you look at current day, it's like everyone is, they're kind of in the middle. There are no true faces and there are no true heels anymore. It's just like they're all kind of thrown in together. Because
Right.
Roman's I called them tweeners. Roman's kind of a tweener too, because he's got half of the crowd for him and half of the crowd. Okay, 3/4 of the crowd doesn't like him, but he still has that 25% that's still there. And it's just like there are no really true heels in wrestling anymore, unless you want to talk about CM Punk. I think he's a true heel.
Well, and this is another thing with the true heels. Iron Sheik was a real heel, and you know who was another great heel? Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah.
When he became the Iraqi and Iranian sympathizer, I mean, he now I had mentioned Nick had mentioned earlier in the show that Sarge was or not Sarge that the Iron Sheik was nearly stabbed, was threatened to get shot at. He needed extra security. Yeah, guess what? Sergeant Slaughter had to walk around with a bulletproof vest on everywhere he went. That's how good, and I don't think you can get that type of heat anymore. You can't get that type of real, legitimate, holy shit heat. And yeah, the honky tonk man was really good himself. I know Jared put that on the comments here. Big Boss Man, another great example. But, I just look, most heel dominance started with the Iron Sheik.
And actually, Hulk Hogan was quoted one time whenever he joined the NWO, or he formed the NWO in WCW. He said that he kind of mimicked what Iron Sheik used to do, because that's how he used to get the nuclear heat. Because if you remember on Nitro, most nights the ring would be so full of trash and whatever else, because people were upset at the NWO. And it's like I said, he was quoted in saying that he kind of tried to get the Iron Sheik heat. And I think he got it at some point, especially at the beginning when he did do the initial heel turn.
Right. Those are the type of images you're just never going to truly see in wrestling again. Like the shock that everybody had in America when Bob Backlund's 5-year title reign ended, the excitement the crowd had when Iron Sheik's reign ended, and like I said, it's because of things like social media and radio appearances that made him just a larger than life star. Because he was only 6 feet 250 ish. And he had his last match, I believe, in 2010. But yeah, it was his MW in 2004. He had an MWF shoot interview DVD, and he talked about his hatred for Brian Blair, Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake, all others. So yeah, and then I remember there was an old school episode of Raw where Iron Sheik was starting to rant about Hulk Hogan, and then the microphone got cut off in the middle of the rant. We see what Jared says here. I hated Hogan in the NWO, and I would have loved to see NWO Hogan versus Iron Sheik. I'll tell you why I wouldn't, because they would have ruined it the way they ruined Ultimate Warrior versus NWO Hogan. It's the only thing.
Oh gosh, I even forgot that was a thing.
Yeah, remember when Warrior came back to wrestling and went to WCW, and they had arguably the worst match of all time?
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that.
Yeah. So once again, folks, we're going to take a quick break from this story. We're, like I said, we're doing a tribute to the Iron Sheik who passed away this morning here on June 7th, 2023, at the age of 81. I do want to go to something that shocked a lot of people as well this morning. Um, and so it was announced that the Chicago Blackhawks are actually in the process of hiring, after a 14-year tenure with St. Louis, Darren Payne. So Panger is going to, it looks like, the Blackhawks broadcasting. Um, and I'm not going to lie, it's absolutely heartbreaking to think about.
I agree. And I will put a side note on this too. I have heard rumblings that he really didn't want to do that, but with the Bally's being so questionable and what their future is, he wanted to go where he was guaranteed a job.
Yeah, and it sucks, but it does make sense.
Yes, but it
Like I
is
said,
very heartbreaking because now we won't get the holy jumping anymore.
well, and that's the thing, the past 14 and oh geez. Well, there's the good doctor. And I'm hoping he's referring to the fact of the Bally Sports networks and everything, and not so much fan bases, which I know he loves to go on a rant about when it comes to St. Louis. But it is true. And it was just a few weeks ago that the Post Dispatch brought to the attention that Panger's contract had expired at the end of this recent season. And in the recent years, he's done more national work. He's worked for the NHL on TNT, on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and the door of opportunities has opened up for him. But it just
But the
sucks being
Blackhawks?
it just sucks being with the division rival. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I'm very proud of him and I'm very happy that he has a job, but it's like I said, it's the Blackhawks.
Exactly. I'm just gonna miss the holy jumping in St. Louis. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, I like what Jared says. The Blackhawks have a terrible fan base, toxic and obnoxious. I mean, can't say it any better than that. Um,
Yep.
now
Even their own
that's
players are toxic. Oh, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
some shots fired. I do have one
Yeah.
more. There is another piece of big breaking news coming out. How about Messi? I mean, he's going to Lionel Messi says he's going to the MLS club Inter Miami. Um, and I'm just like absolutely stunned. Babs, what do you think about it?
This is the first I'm actually hearing about that. So I am just like, I'm just as shocked as you are. So, well, I don't know what to say to that. I hadn't prepared myself for that one. Yeah, that's pretty huge. Well, I mean, at least it gives the MLS here a pretty popular name to go by.
I mean, yeah, that's true too. I mean, it's just great marketing, but on top of that, there's so much.
That would be like David Beckham coming and playing for St. Louis. I mean, a
Exactly.
little.
I'm still stunned by it. And ooh, here we go. How do you feel? We got a question coming in. How do you feel about Albert Pujols' new job as a special assistant to the commissioner?
I actually love this move because the Dominican Republic baseball is really close to my heart for personal reasons, just because I've kind of followed the upbringing of, Carlos Martinez, and you get to see and get to know the players down there. The their training facilities are terrible there. They're playing in like glass and all kinds of stuff. And, there were also players that were having issues with their birth certificates and all that stuff. And hopefully Albert can fix those, because maybe once he goes down and, gets his hands on, because everybody in the Dominican Republic sees Albert as a god. I am not kidding you. He is like bona fide god level. And every time that you mention him, they're just like, oh my gosh. And then they just start, rambling off things about him that people just, it's crazy to even think of. But yeah, he's seen as god level, and hopefully that'll make some changes down there. And I really would like to see those kids down there get a really decent ballpark, or some decent
Right.
ballparks. So I think it's an awesome move. And I also think that maybe this opens the door for him taking over for Manfred later. I've even gone that far.
Shit, I'll take whoever I can get if it means taking over for Rob Manfred.
Because, I mean, Albert really does have a good baseball mind, not just as a player, but
Oh,
as a
absolutely.
person. Yeah. So, I mean, it's great for the sport all around, I think.
No, I think it's a great move. Most definitely. Um, Now, I want your take on the good doctor here when he says that MLS is overtaking hockey in the United States.
Well, I guess I'm down the middle on this one, because I'm a new hockey fan and I'm also a new soccer fan, but I have been on them watching soccer more than hockey. And I kind of agree with them, because everyone's been talking about soccer and now everybody wants teams. Like, I think San Diego's getting a new team.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've heard that like there's a few other cities that have been rambling, or rumbling that they want a team too. And I've never been to a game because tickets are so skyrocket high in price, but the entire stadium's filled.
Oh, absolutely. And the prices have gone through the roof. Record TV deals are being set up. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of excited to see its future, because I've actually been paying attention to soccer since they got a team in St. Louis, and it's actually been very, what's the word, I'm like not exciting, but very refreshing to watch,
Well,
because
and I
it's
find
something
it.
off of the main four sports that we have.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like it's funny. At one point, St. Louis just was a two-sport town again. And now here we are. We got MLB, we got the NHL, we got the XFL, and we got MLS. I mean, and it does wonders for the economy of the city. Sporting KC is one of the most popular sports in the Kansas City metro area. Um, and even though they've struggled this year, but it's just one of those things.
Yep, it's a learning curve.
So I definitely am just loving the expansion of more sports throughout the country.
You know what sport I
Um,
wish that we could get? I wish we could get lacrosse. I have been watching the national lacrosse thing that they've got going on. I'm a huge Buffalo Bandits fan, but that sport is like hockey on crack. And it's
I,
awesome.
you know what? I love this when the good doc says how the atmosphere of soccer is unlike any other sport. It really is. Look, internationally, you watch it. First off, I watch a Saint STLSC um, a match, and the crowd. You would think there's 80,000 fans in that stadium. Like they just go electric, And then, yeah, JM's talking about women's soccer getting a brand new stadium in Kansas City. Women's soccer is extremely popular too, but I feel like it's the one sport, men and women's soccer, where no matter what, the crowd is just into it from beginning to end. I mean, it is just nonstop awesome action. Like, and it's fantastic, and the athletes are phenomenal. So no, I definitely love seeing the expansion of MLS in the United States. Having Major League Soccer is just beyond beneficial. I know the NBA is looking to expand, and there's a chance Kansas City could be a team that once again would have an NBA team, among others. So, no, I definitely, you love to see it.
I just think that it's amazing to have something positive about this city to actually talk about instead of everything else that's going on. Because it is like I said, it's very refreshing. It's been refreshing to everyone, and now there's buzz for that, and hopefully it'll strive. And maybe once Kansas City comes around and gets a team, maybe we can have an I-70 rivalry there too.
Well, that's another thing, the NHL's looking to expand, and once again, Kansas City comes in. Then you got the Royals moving to a new spot in Kansas City area, closer to downtown, where they would have their own district and everything. Like,
I
which
don't
is
like that
crazy.
idea.
Well, it's crazy because the K has been such an iconic part of Kansas City, but at the same time, I mean, look, I don't think you should move either stadium, but if you are, you're moving the wrong team because nobody's going to these Royal games.
Right.
So that's where we're at with everything, folks. And with that, I know it's short, sweet, and to the point, but we're actually going to be wrapping it up this week here on Roundabout Sports. As always, I want to give a shout out to Hollywood James Knox. We're always thinking of you, brother. I know he's been doing much better, and we're just getting excited for when he actually makes his long-awaited return to Roundabout Sports. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can go on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, so many other places you can find Roundabout Sports. And we always put up the NAMI hotline at 1-800-950-NAMI. That is 1-800-950-NAMI. It's the National Association of Mental Illnesses. It's the largest grassroots nonprofit campaign in the United States based off the advocacy of mental health awareness. And of course, as always, we end every show by putting up the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Understand that you're never alone. The number is just 988. It's open 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. You're never alone in this world. There's always somebody out there who truly, truly loves you. And you could also be the ears for somebody else to talk to and to listen for. So we're all on this earth, and let's try to stick together. So I'm the maestro, Jeremy Karp, ladies and gentlemen, alongside Babs. Thank you so much for tuning in this week on Roundabout Sports, and we will most definitely catch you next time. And as always, remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives